Israel has been one of the main backers of militants fighting government forces in Syria. The course of the conflict, especially over the past year, has caused jitters in Tel Aviv. Israel's favorite militants have lost ground to the Syrian military and its allied forces such as Hezbollah fighters. Syria's Golan Heights is no exception. Syrian government forces have gained the upper hand there, and many of the militants, like those of the Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, formerly known as the Nusra Front, have been forced to retreat. Israel has become increasingly impatient with the recent developments. It has stepped up its airstrikes against the positions of the Syrian army in the Golan. It is now signaling that it could keep up its air raids in Syria despite any truce agreement that may emerge in the future.
They're supporting militant groups in Syria. They've admitted to supporting al-Qaeda. Their head of military intelligence said they didn't want to see ISIS defeated in Syria. All along, their policy has been pretty clear. What they said in an interview with the New York Times is Israel wants Syria to bleed, to hemorrhage to death. And so they seem to be focused on keeping the conflict going as long as possible.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump said on Saturday that the two sides are engaged in efforts to stabilize Syria. Israel wants any future agreement between the United States and Russia to give guarantees that the Syrian army and its allied forces will not come close to Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Tel Aviv has been pushing Washington to include this condition in any future deal with Moscow. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Tel Aviv has informed both the Kremlin and the White House that it will not halt its military actions in Syria. I have also informed our friends, firstly in Washington and also our friends in Moscow, that Israel will act in Syria, including in southern Syria, according to our understanding and according to our security needs. Israel's violations of Syrian airspace have never been criticized by the United States. Russia has also failed to publicly denounce Israel's violations or threats against the Syrian government. Observers say this has emboldened Israel.
Why President Putin hasn't come out stronger is a question, is a difficult question. I think he has alliances with both Israel and Syria. I don't think he wants to see that conflict escalated any more than it is already. But I think that his patience will be wearing thin now.
The Israeli regime is now talking about a free hand in Syria, implying that even areas far from the Golan Heights may be targeted again, despite any type of truce. Meanwhile, the conflict in Syria seems to be nearing its end. The war has almost totally destroyed Syria's infrastructure and weakened its army. But plans drawn up by the West and some regional players like Saudi Arabia and Israel seem to have largely failed. The Western-led bloc now seems to be acting out of desperation to make up for some of its losses.